Hi, everyone. Okay, it's time to keep building. Hopefully, based upon how you did last week, and hopefully listening to the solutions and reviewing the solutions, you are feel kind of comfortable moving forward. Again, you're just beginning. If you're not overly comfortable yet, that's fine. But hopefully you kind of got the ideas. And again, we're going to keep moving forward. This week, we're not going to go crazy, but we're going to pick it up a little bit in regards to a more complex problem, a problem that I kind of warned you about that could have multiple outputs and so on. And we also need to discuss a few new topics, one scope and one testing to kind of finish out our discussion on the design checklist. All right, so that's our goal for this week. To introduce this, I think the best thing, one way I like to introduce this is just versus just talking about it. Let's just look at a problem and let's solve this problem together. And in doing so, hopefully try to understand where the gaps are, and then we'll introduce those new topics and hopefully it'll make a little more sense to you. All right, so let's get started. So what we're going to do is a company came to us, a store, we'll say, an actual storefront that rents boards, ski boards. I want to say it again, snowboards, and at their store. So this is a place that maybe it's out in Colorado at a ski resort, and you can go in and actually rent snowboards, or in this case, snowboards with boots. They hired us for them to write an application to allow them to calculate how much each rental would cost per customer. Okay, so if a customer walked in the door and they wanted to rent two snowboards, how much that would cost. And also in the application, they want to keep a summary of how many snowboards and snowboards with boots they actually have rented, how much they've made for that day, and what the average is for their customer. Okay, that's sort of the goal here. And so, with that said, what this problem is asking you is exactly that. Very bored rent snowboards during the snow season. A person can rent a snowboard without boots or with boots. Create a project that will calculate the information for each rental. In addition, calculate the summary information for each day's rental. For each rental, input the person's name, the driver's license or ID number, the number of snowboards, and the number of snowboards with boots. Snowboards without boots rent for $20, and snowboards with boots rent for $30. Okay? Calculate and display the charges for snowboards and snowboards with boots and the rental total. You're going to do that for each customer that walks in the door, one at a time. In addition, maintain summary totals. Use constants for the snowboard rental rate and the snowboards with boots rental rates. We mentioned constants a little bit last week, but specifically on a solution. So we'll talk about constants a little bit more in this case. Create a summary frame with labels to indicate the day's totals for the number of snowboards and snowboards with boots rented. So what they want on this application is to be able to see how many they rented throughout the day. So this is sort of like a cash register, but it's going to keep a summary for them so they can actually have a decent idea of how they're doing, how many they actually rented, the total charges that they actually accumulated throughout the day, and the average charge per customer. All right. We're going to include command buttons for clear, clear all, and exit, and so on. Okay. So where do we start with this? Once again, we always start with our design. Now things got more complicated. Remember I warned you about this, that there's times when we sit back and the problem's easy, and it's very easy to bypass the whole, design part of it, just dive into your code. But I wanted you to practice that, and I hope you really did, okay? Because I want you to look at it now, because now you got a lot of stuff here. And you really need to break this thing down to truly understand what the problem's asking you. Going back to your design checklist, hopefully you have that sitting by your side, as we read through it. We sit back and say the very first thing we need to do is get our inputs. So I'm gonna go here and I'm going to pin this real fast and help us. Where's our inputs at? What inputs do we have? What's going into this thing? Okay, I want you to think about it for 1 second. I'm going to pause for a whole 3 seconds. And what are the inputs? Well, if you go here, it says for each rental, input person's name, driver's license or ID, okay, whatever we want to say here, the number of snowboards they want to rent, and the number of snowboards with boots they want to rent. Is there anything else? Okay, for lack of not hearing you through this video, there isn't, okay? And so this spells out the inputs rather nicely, correct? And so that's a good thing in this case. It doesn't happen that way all the time. Once again, you're gonna have to really read these things and make sure you're all inclusive with your inputs. Again, we'll keep practicing these throughout this course. All right. Once you have those inputs, you label them down here. Name, ID number, number of snowboards, and number of snowboards with boots. All right, you got it? All right, the outputs. So there outputs here. So we got to calculate and display the charges for snowboards. So display piece is an output, and snowboards with boots. Okay, and the rental total. We got it. In addition, maintain summary totals. All right, what does that mean? Summary totals. Well, in the summary frame, use labels to indicate the day's totals for the number of snowboards, so number of snowboards and number of snowboards with boots. Okay, the total charges and the average charge for customers. This is a daily thing here. So in this case, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 7, right? Different outputs. Do you see that? Now, as you're walking through this problem, the whole idea is to brainstorm the outputs, meaning make sure you identify them all. That's number 2 in our list, identify the outputs. You are to do that to ensure that you got them all. Don't worry about the order, don't worry about anything, just label the outputs. So I have like daily total number of snowboards they wanted, the daily total number of snowboards with boots, the charges for snowboards with boots, the rental total, the daily total charges, the average charge per customer, and the charges for the snowboards. All right, so I took those 7, I think I got 7 here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that I indicated up here, and I put them down here. Yep, things got a little bit more complicated, did they not, right? It's not the simple little one input, one output. You got to read this and break it down. Now, this is very easy to get overwhelmed. Oh my God, how am I going to do all this? That is not how you approach this. You figure out your inputs and you figure out your outputs. The next step in the design piece is, are there any assumptions? I look at this, I don't really think so. You may have some, but I think everything is pretty straightforward with this. I'm all right with this. The next step in your design checklist, hopefully you have sitting by your side, is, you're all screaming it out, right? Put the outputs in logical order. What am I going to solve for first? All right. What I mean by that is that what can I solve for? Do I have to solve these things in any particular order to really make this thing work? Well, the answer is probably so. Remember, a customer is going to come in and is going to calculate. A customer is going to come in and say how many snowboards they actually want and how many snowboards with boots they actually want. We want to press submit, and there should be a total for the charges for the snowboards with boots. So there you go. That's number 1. That's the first thing we solved for, and the charges for snowboards without boots. And that should be number 2, or vice versa. That should then give us our rental total. I'm not going to walk through this, but I highly recommend you walk through this yourself, okay? This should be the third thing. I'm going to do this for the customer before I ever start doing the daily totals, right? So, I got to ring up the customer first, and I'm going to add all these things then to the daily totals. So then the number of snowboards, I can go ahead and make this number 4 if I like. And I can make this one number 5. And then I can make this one, let's see, where are we at here? I can make this with the daily total charges. Yep, I can make that one number 6. And then finally, my average. I might have to get my daily total charges before I ever do my average. Does that make sense? So I put these things on here hodgepodge. You may have put them in the right order from the very beginning. But if you didn't, that's what that next step is all about. Put things in logical order. Make sure these are in the order in which you're going to solve. Why is that a big deal? Well, once again, you can't solve for net pay until you solve for gross pay, right? And from a payroll point of view. So you got to do things in the right order, okay? And also, this makes everything easier because what I'm going to do is solve for one output at a time. And so my approach to solving for one output at a time was no different than when I solved for just one output in the previous problems we had last week. And if I just keep my wits about me and sit back and say, I'm not going to worry about everything on here, I'm going to worry about one thing and one thing only, in this case, number one. And as soon as I'm done with that, then I'll go to number two. But as I'm doing number one, I'm not worried about number 5, 6, or 7, because that's how people get overwhelmed because they start worrying about everything. They think they got to solve for everything at one time. Nope. You put these in logical order and you solve for one at a time. Does that make sense? All right. And so that's kind of what we breaking this down and how we go about doing this. Okay. I'm going to end this video here. I'll see you in the next video to be able to walk through and actually now design this solution. Okay.